Hilchot Shabbat, we continue Hilchot Bishul. In other words, we said the essence of the Bishul is we change state of something from one state to another state. That is the melacha. That's the essence of melacha. To understand every melacha, we have to understand what's the essence of the melacha. As long as we don't get the essence of the melacha, we don't understand what's the melacha about. Therefore, now, for solid thing, we talked about if something is raw and it's not edible, or if it is edible, but in that state, it's being eaten in a certain way. And you cook it and becomes in a state of cooked. And now the usage is different. Or it was raw, now it's edible. Or even if it's raw, now the usage is different. That is the melacha d'oraita of Bishul. Now, how much do you have to cook? How much do you have to cook that we consider is to d'oraita? You say that has to be cooked, that should be usable. Now, there was a robber comes when the Rusai. He used to rub things and to make barbecue and to cook fast and eat. Now, since he was a robber, he didn't have enough time to cook things properly. He would do minimum of eating, minimum of cooking, and then he would eat it right away because always he was afraid that people are after him. He didn't have time to stay in one place. Therefore, he cooked. Now it's a machloket, how much of they cook? 1/3 or half? Half or 1/3? Now, since it's the question of d'oraita, we're going to be machmir. We say till 1/3 is considered cooking with d'oraita. Therefore, we have to be careful not to cook something even 1/3 of that. Even less than that, we should not cook. But the chiyuv of chatat and the chiyuv of korban is that much. Now, even after 1/3 of cooking, still is also to cook it to make it better. But in other words, 1/3 would be d'oraita, mechayev, chatat, and sebil. Now, that is for our study that we talked about. Now, what about if you have liquid? Now, liquid, when does it become considered cooking? You have water, you have soup, you have juice, you have gravy, and you want to cook them. What's considered as cooked already? And that's an important point to know, because first of all, to understand that it's considered cooking, and then you could do chazara. In other words, if I want to do chazara on Shabbat, if you take a pot from the stove and you take something out and you want to put it back, one of the conditions is that the food is cooked. Now, otherwise you have soup, and you want to take some soup out and put it back. Now, it has to be cooked. Why? Because if it's not cooked, when you put it back, you are cooking it, for sure it's also. Therefore, one of the conditions that you should be able to do chazara to return back is that thing is cooked. Now, what is called cooking regarding to liquid? Now, the Gemara says, liquid, the cooking temperature for liquid is yat soledet bo. Yat soledet bo means the hand would get burned with it. Soledet means really, the way that Rosh explains, means to be worried and concerned about something that is going to happen to you. Therefore, really, yat soledet bo means that if you put your finger inside, you're going to be worried that your finger gets burned and you pull out your finger. That's soledet bo means. Soledet means you're anxious, you're concerned. With the Alga believe, like Rashi says, Moshech Yado, because God libo, because he has the Alga that it might burn my finger, he would pull his hand, his finger. That would be considered. That would be considered that he is Yat soledet bo. Now, if it gets to Yat soledet bo, if it gets to the shur of Yat soledet bo, that would be considered Bishul for liquid. Therefore, liquid is Yat soledet bo. Now, how do we measure Yat soledet bo? The Gemara itself asks the kasha, how do we know? In other words, if you understand the question of the Gemara is, it depends on the people. Some people, the cook, he could keep his hand in the warm thing much longer than somebody not a cook. Or husband and wife hands, got used to cooking, therefore she could keep her finger longer. Therefore, what is that? The Gemara says to make a shiur that's shaveh lechol nefesh. The Gemara says that the shiur is that keres shel tinok nichrebo. In other words, what is that the stomach of a baby of newborn baby, first day, newborn baby, the stomach of a baby get burnt through that. Therefore, that shiur was given. Why that shiur was given? Because the baby is not accustomed to anything. It's fresh, like the Persian explained. Therefore, here the Gemara is saying that we can't measure with people because people are different. We measure with the stomach of a baby if the heat is enough to burn stomach of a baby, newborn, that is not accustomed to the heat, and that burns it. That would be considered Yachad Kollel. Now, the Persian say if that's the case, then for that we don't need that much heat. In other words, there is a heat that if you put your finger and you take it out, you don't need that much heat that you put right away out for the stomach of a tinok to get burned. So a tinok would get burned even less heat than that. So the Persian say, he says, Yat soledet bo. What does bo? Bo means in it. Therefore, it has to be hot enough that if you keep your hand for seconds there, right? If you just keep your hand a little bit there, it's going to get burned. It doesn't have to be right away you pull it out. Not so much heat we don't need. It's like by tinok also, we don't need so much heat. Therefore, if you keep your hand shortly there and you feel that getting your finger is getting burned, that's absolutely correct. That is the way to measure. Now, who do we measure? We cannot measure somebody that is very sensitive, and we cannot measure somebody that is not sensitive at all. We go with the average people. Average people, they put their finger there, that in other words, not that pull it out and take it out right away. That's not the shiur. In other words, if you leave it there a little bit, short time, and you pull it out because of the heat, that's the heat of Yachad Kollel. But if you could keep your hand long there, you don't have to take it out. Short time, after a short time, then that the heat is not Yachad Kollel. Therefore, to liquid to be considered Bishul, it has to get to level of Yachad Kollel. Now, poskim are not very comfortable with this because the Gemara says, what is Yachad Kollel? Tinok nichrebo. Therefore, Ben Ishchai says that how do we measure that? Ben Ishchai says it's a very big machloket, and it's not very clear that what the shiur is, because the Gemara says tinok nichrebo, and this shiur is very hard to measure. It's not easy to measure. The Ben Ishchai comes along from the poskim that the Mesorah, the tradition was like this: if the drink is such a drink that you could drink it comfortably, that's not Yachad Kollel. But if you cannot drink it comfortably because it's hot, that's going to burn your tongue, and it's not comfortable for you to drink it, that's Yachad Kollel. That's the shiur that Ben Ishchai gives for Yachad Kollel, and therefore this shiur would be the chumrah. In other words, in other words, it is in other words, to be comfortably. In other words, not to be comfortable to drink, you don't need that much heat. No, that is that the Ben Ishchai says that would be ruling of Ben Ishchai. Now, Lemaister, what do we do? Lemaister, we have these two shiurim. One shiur is that you keep your finger there for a short time and you have to pull it out. That shiur is more heat. Or you cannot drink it comfortably. That would be less heat and be considered Bishul. Now, since it could be a question of Doraita, whether it's considered Bishul or not, now we're going to be machmir both ways. In other words, if you are talking about that when we come to a shiur of how much shiur should get to be Doraita, we're going to go with the less shiur. You're going to say that as long as you get to the less shiur, would be Yachad Kollel. And therefore, you should not do it. Let's say that, for example, you have a soup. you want to put soup someplace that, in other words, we said that if you put it someplace on the blech, that wouldn't get Yachad Kollel, you could leave it there. It doesn't matter. Now, how much would the Yachad Kollel go if it doesn't get so hot that you could drink it comfortably? Then that would be allowed. But if you cannot drink it comfortably, then you will not be allowed to do that. You're going to be mach. In this case, that's the chumrah. Or if we are talking about something that was cooked, and then we want to say that since it was cooked already, there is no cooking on it, or to be concerned about, let's say that we want to do chazorah. On Shabbat, we want to have the pot, we want to do chazorah. Then we're going to go with the more strict shiur. In other words, to do chazorah, it has to reach already to a shiur of that. If you put your finger there, you have to pull it out. If it's shorty, you have to pull it out. Once that shiur happened, that was a bishul already, then we could do chazorah. Therefore, we gonna go with these two shiurim, and we're gonna be machmir in a case that we have to be machmir. In other words, these two cases I said, in other words, because these two has the halacha. In other words, one, we need to know, to understand that when is it cooked that to do chazorah. On that, we're going to be machmir, and we're going to say the greater heat. In other words, it has to get to a point that if you put your finger shortly there, you have to put it out. If it is less than that, you are not allowed to do chazorah. Chazorah would not be mutar because we lost the bishul and it's not mevushal. And if a person wants to put it in a place that he wants to take soup out of the fridge, you are not allowed to put on blech because we pass in yesh bishul achar bishul. There's bishul after bishul on Shabbat. But if you want to put it in a blech someplace that it will never get to Yachad Kollel, says it's mutar, says it's mutar. Now we say that for that it has to be in the place that you put that it would not get heated so much that you cannot drink it comfortably. In other words, you cannot drink, you have to stop drinking because of the heat. If that much heat would be on Yachad Kollel, then it would be asur to leave it there. Pichlal, if you have a soup and you wanted to put it on blech, and you say, okay, I put it on blech just to break the chip. We talked about it. If the place could get you accelerated bow, then would be asur. We are not allowed to do that because it's a kisera. But if the place, there's not that much heat, if you leave it there till 3-4 hours till the end of Shabbat, you will not get you accelerated bow, then it's mutar to break the chip. Now we're going to talk about what about if you have a towel or a baguette or a garment that got wet, or from water or from other drink. Now, what you want to do, you want to put it next to stove or next to a heating element that should get dry because you need it for Shabbat or you need it to wear it, you need it. Now, the halacha is that if you leave it, if you take it close to fire, heat, to vibrate the moisture from the garment, the vibration of the water and vibration of the water would be considered bishul. We are not allowed to put that garment next to the fire that would heat up and would vibrate the moisture from the garment, and that would be considered bishul. Not only that, but even if somebody washes hand, or somebody came out with the rain, and the hand or the body is wet, and he wants to go next to a place that the heat is so much that it warms up the water on the body or on the hand and vibrates the water, that also would be asur because of the halacha of Bishul. Now, this other halacha, once we talked about that, it's very interesting halacha that, now what about if you have a wet garment from sweat or whatever, water, and you want to put it on the robe that you have outside in the yard, or you have a robe someplace that you usually leave there, the dress that you washed, and you want to put it there to get dried on Shabbat, then it's asur. Why is it asur? Because if somebody looks at that, he would say, oh, you wash the dress on Shabbat. See, it's very important halacha as a community, you have to understand that we have to keep Shabbat in a way that is a communal thing. It's not a private thing. Keeping Shabbat is a communal thing. Therefore, it is very important isurim that on Shabbat comes along, and this isurim are maritime, because people might see and feel that Shabbat is okay. So that's why it's not the issur of Shabbat. It's not whatever that you're gonna do. If you do something that it sounds to the community that you're doing an issur, even though that you're not doing an issur, there's issur of maritime for a lot of isurim, especially on Shabbat. Shabbat, you have to be very careful. Why? Because Shabbat has an aspect of communal thing. So it's very interesting. In the parasha last week, we learned that were in Midbar, and they found somebody that did the melacha. He gathered wood on Shabbat, and gathering wood is ma'amir. And they didn't know what type of death we should give to him. They put him in the prison, and Hashem told Moshe, they have to stone him. Oh, it's interesting. The way that Torah says to stone him, Torah says the ragom oto. Really, to stone somebody is the regom, not ragom. There's a difference between regom and ragom. They say zechor and zochor. In other words, if you want to tell somebody, remember something, you say zechor. It's not zochor. But for Shabbat, wasn't said zechor, said zochor. Now, Mefarshim say, why by Shabbat says zachor? Zachor is it's a term of a verb in Hebrew that is not just a command. If it's a command, it says zachor, to remember. Zachor is the name of the verb. To be remembered, In other words, to be remembering, means constantly you have to remember. And that makes the halacha to be a much different halacha. If Torah would have said zechor, that means to say that on Shabbat, remember Shabbat. Once remember Shabbat, on Shabbat, you say kiddush, you say tefillah, you remember Shabbat. But Torah didn't say zechor, Torah says zachor. Zachor means constantly you have to remember Shabbat. So the mitzvah aseh is not just on Shabbat. The mitzvah aseh of Shabbat, remembering Shabbat is all day. From Motzei Shabbat, you have to remember Shabbat. From the time that person becomes mature in his life to understand what's going on, he has to remember Shabbat. Why? Because Shabbat is the day that you take a break. And you say that I'm not the one who does it. Hashem did. Hashem created the world and he rested on Shabbat. Every minute, second that we rest on Shabbat, we're giving testimony that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing that. You are taking the break. And Shabbat is the break that you are taking. Therefore, on Shabbat, person takes a break, and every minute and second that you take a break, remember. Now that remembering has to happen all week. To understand whatever that you are doing, you are just involved in the activity. But the result belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Through that, you have a faith, to be honest, to do it in the right way, do it in the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Not I'm a Bali boss, I do. Bracha comes from Shabbat. Remembering of Shabbat, all this zachor. That's why Torah says zachor, not zechor. Because constantly you have to remember that HaKadosh created the world and rested, and we have to do the same thing all week. Shemirat Shabbat is not just on Shabbat itself. It's all week. You have to remember Shabbat. You have to live with the idea of Shabbat that Hashem created. I'm not in charge, Hashem is in charge. Therefore, I do it in an honest way. I don't trick. I don't do things that Hashem doesn't like me to do it, because that the beracha would not be there. Now it's interesting, Torah should have said, Rekom oto ba'avanim, kol ha'edam mechutz ha'machane. But Torah doesn't say in the parasha, Rekom says Ragom. Now Rashi says, why Torah says Ragom? What does Ragom mean? Lo hayu yodim be'ezdom mitayamun. Ragom, Paluch, V'chen zachor b'shamu. In other words, Rashi says it's like zachor. Ragam means not that just stoning. In other words, it has to be stoned. Be stoned constantly. In other words, if there's a chilul Shabbat in the community the damage comes to all of the community together. He put the poison in the community. He made the community to be broken. The community, that image of Shabbat, that the Kedusha of Shabbat is broken. What should we do? We should zachor. We have to now remember. We have to ragomot. We have to stone that idea, that thing, because the person becomes numb. Once it becomes numb, then Chilul Shabbat doesn't mean that much. But no, the person should not become numb. No. Ragom, not regom, ragom. This idea of Chilul Shabbat has to be stoned through community to understand that, Chilul Shabbat is very chamur. That's why Torah says ragom. So that's why it's very important in the community. We have to do things that everybody feels comfortable, and we should not give a wrong message to other people. Therefore, a person cannot hang all clothing that was wet, became wet on Shabbat on his robe that is using to dry his clothing, because people would say that he washes clothing. Now, Bishul is not just for food. Person melt down any type of metal, or mechami with a machetechet, and or he heat up the matechet at chasik and till it becomes like a red, and or it wants to soften it. That's what the Bishul is also. There comes out from this halacha we learn out heating element, in other words, stove or any electrical things that the person uses on Shabbat. Even though that we say using electrical appliances to make a circuit on Shabbat is only Sud Rabbanan, not Sud Right. To make a circuit, any appliance that we use it on Shabbat, and we're making a circuit, that circuit is only Sud Rabbanan, because we're making a circuit. It's not Asur Doraita, it's only Asur on, it's only Asur Rabbanan. But what about if you turn on a heating element? If you have a stove, electrical stove, or you have heating element that you want to put it on Shabbat. One might think, since it's only electrical, it's only the Rabbanan, but it's not the Rabbanan, it's the right. Because heating element, the element inside becomes red hot and glows, and that would be Havara or Bishul. It depends on the case. And even in lamp also that has a middle inside, and the middle becomes red. The fire, within Torah, fire is something that has heat and light. Whatever that has heat and light is fire. The lamp also, that the person turns on the lamp and gives light, the lamps with the middle inside the bulb, and this middle becomes red hot and has light and has heat. That's also the light. And any heating element, stove and everything like that the element inside gets red hot, that also is Surah, it's not Rabbana. Somebody melt down the fat or the tar and also another if you have a pottery and you make a pottery, and then from the earthenware, and then you put it in stove to become hard. That also Melacha Bishul. Melacha Bishul is changing from one state to another state, from a state of soft to hard. Now, the issue of Bishul on Shabbat is only if you did it with fire. Because we learn from the Mishkan was done with the fire, and only with fire, or whatever that Torah considers to be fire. Now, what about if you cook it with fire and gets a level? Now, what about if you cook with sun? In other words, if a person puts an egg in front of sun, that the sun cooks the egg, that is mutar, because that's not called the bishul, that's also on Shabbat. In other words, only with the fire, using fire and cooking is also on Shabbat. But if you are not using the fire, you are just using the sun, is mutar. Now, what about if you have a pot, a bowl, or a cloth that became heated through sun, and you want to put an egg on it and cook it? You're not using the sun directly, you're using the rays of sun that heated up this pot, and now the pot is hot, you want to put an egg inside and eat it. cook it and eat it. Now that also would not be mutar. Why? In other words, if you cook with the sun itself, it's recognizable that you cooked with sun. Everybody could tell and see. Sun itself, we are not going to make a decree with fire. It's mutar. But told that sun, something that came heated through the sun, nobody sees that was done through the sun. People might think that this pot became hot through the heat of fire. And if this pot is hot, or if you take a pot out of the fire and you put something inside and cook it, it's also. So midoraita, even midoraita is also. I mean, hatorah is also. Because you are cooking. Because this pot is hot right now, it's kelishon and cooks. Therefore, if you use the sun itself, it's mutar. But if you use the tolda of the stone, is asur, is asur because we're going to confuse it with the sun itself. Not that it says sun is mutar, only sun is mutar. But what about the, I said, the electrical or anything else that you create and heat and has the din of fire midoraita, then that cooking would be asur midoraita. If a person uses plate chashmali or whatever that, the stove, electrical stove, whatever, that the person cooks with that is not the isur drabanon, it's also doraita, because that would be considered cooking.